Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 98. Chapter 98. In June, the Battle of Friedland was fought, in which the Pavlograds did not take part, and after that, an armistice was proclaimed. Rostov, who felt his friend's absence very much, having no news of him since he left, and feeling very anxious about his wound and the progress of his affairs, took advantage of the armistice to get leave to visit Denisov in hospital. The hospital was in a small Prussian town that had been twice devastated by Russian and French troops. Because it was summer, when it is so beautiful out in the fields, the little town presented a particularly dismal appearance with its broken roofs and fences, its foul streets, tattered inhabitants, and the sick and drunken soldiers wandering about. The hospital was in a brick building, with some of the window frames and panes broken, and a courtyard surrounded by the remains of a wooden fence that had been pulled to pieces. Several bandaged soldiers, with pale, swollen faces, were sitting or walking about in the sunshine in the yard. Directly Rostov entered the door, and he was enveloped by a smell of putrefaction and hospital air. On the stairs, he met a Russian army doctor smoking a cigar. The doctor was followed by a Russian assistant. "I can't tear myself to pieces," the doctor was saying. "Come, Makar Alexeyevich, in the evening. I shall be there." The assistant asked some further questions. "Oh, do the best you can. Isn't it all the same?" The doctor noticed Rostov coming upstairs. "What do you want, sir?" said the doctor. "What do you want? The bullets have spared you. Do you want to try typhus? This is a pest house, sir." "How so?" asked Rostov. "Typhus, sir. It's death to go in. Only we two, Makiev and I," he said, pointing to the assistant, "keep on here. Some 5 of us doctors have died in this place. When a new one comes, he is done for in a week," said the doctor with evident satisfaction. "Prussian doctors have been invited here, but our allies don't like it at all." Rostov explained that he wanted to see Major Denisov of the Hussars, who was wounded. "I don't know. I can't tell you, sir. Only think. I am alone in charge of 3 hospitals with more than 400 patients. It's well that the charitable Prussian lady sent us 2 pounds of coffee and some lint each month, or we should be totally lost." He laughed. 400, sir. And they're always sending me fresh ones. These are 400, eh?" he asked, turning to the assistant. The assistant looked fagged out. He was evidently vexed and impatient for the talkative doctor to go. "Major Denisov," Rostov said again. "He was wounded at Moliton." "Dead, I fancy. Eh, Makiev?" queried the doctor in a tone of indifference. The assistant, however, did not confirm the doctor's words. "Is he tall and with reddish hair?" asked the doctor. Rostov described Denisov's appearance. "There was one like that," said the doctor, as if pleased. "That one is dead, I fancy. However, I'll look up our list. We had a list. Have you got it, Makiev?" "Makar Alexeyevich has the list," answered the assistant. "But if you'll step into the officers' wards, you'll see for yourself," he added, turning to Rostov. "You better not go, sir," said the doctor, "or you may have to stay here for yourself." But Rostov bowed himself away from the doctor and asked the assistant to show him the way. "Only don't blame me," the doctor shouted up after him. Rostov and the assistant went into the dark corridor. The smell was so strong there that Rostov held his nose and had to pause to collect his strength before he could go on. A door opened to the right, and an emaciated, sallow man on crutches, barefoot and underclothing, limped out, and leaning against the doorpost, looked with glittering, envious eyes at those who were passing. Glancing in at the door, Rostov saw that the sick and wounded were lying on the floor on straw and overcoats. May I go in and have a look?" "What is there to see?" said the assistant. But, just because the assistant evidently did not want him to go in, Rostov entered the soldiers' ward. The foul air, to which he had already begun to get used to in the corridor, was still stronger here. It was a little different, more pungent, and one felt that this was where it had originated. In the long room, brightly lit up by the sun through the large windows, the sick and wounded lay in 2 rows with their heads to the walls, leaving a passage in the middle. Most of them were unconscious and paid no attention to the newcomers. Those who were conscious raised themselves or lifted their thin yellow faces, and all looked intently at Rostov, with the same expression of hope, of relief, reproach, and envy of another's health. Rostov went to the middle of the room, and looking through the open doors into the 2 adjoining rooms, saw the same thing there. He stood still, looking silently around. He had not at all expected such a sight. Just before him, almost across the middle of the passage on the bare floor, lay a sick man, probably a Cossack to judge by the cut of his hair. The man lay on his back, his huge arms and legs outstretched. His face was purple. His eyes were rolled back so that only the whites were seen, and on his bare legs and arms, which were still red, the veins stood out like cords. He was knocking the back of his head against the floor, hoarsely uttering some word which he kept repeating. Rostov listened and made out the word. It was drink, drink, a drink. Rostov glanced around, looking for someone who would put this man back in his place and bring him water. "Who looks after the sick here?" he asked the assistant. Just then a commissariat soldier, a hospital orderly, came in from the next room, marching stiffly, and drew up in front of Rostov. "Good day, Your Honor," he shouted, rolling his eyes at Rostov, and evidently mistaking him for one of the hospital authorities. "Get him to his place and give him some water," said Rostov, pointing to the Cossack. "Yes, Your Honor," the soldier replied complacently, and rolling his eyes more than ever, he drew himself up still straighter, but did not move. "No, it's impossible to do anything here," thought Rostov, lowering his eyes. And he was going out, but became aware of an intense look fixed on him, on his right, and he turned. Close to the corner, on an overcoat, sat an old, unshaven, gray-bearded soldier, as thin as a skeleton, with a stern, sallow face and eyes intently fixed on Rostov. The man's neighbor on one side whispered something to him, pointing at Rostov, who noticed that the old man wanted to speak to him. He drew nearer and saw that the old man had only one leg bent under him. The other had been amputated above the knee. His neighbor on the other side, who lay motionless some distance from him and with his head thrown back, was a young soldier with a snub nose. His pale, waxen face was still freckled, and his eyes were rolled back. Rostov looked at the young soldier, and a cold chill ran down his back. "Why, this one seems," he began, turning to the assistant. "And how we've been begging Your Honor," said the old soldier, his jaw quivering. "He's been dead since morning. After all, we're men, not dogs." "I'll send someone at once. He shall be taken away at once," said the assistant hurriedly. "Let's go, Your Honor." Yes, let's go," said Rostov hastily, and lowering his eyes and shrinking, he tried to pass unnoticed between the rows of reproachful, envious eyes that were fixed upon him, and went out of the room. All right, so that concludes my reading of chapter 98. I'll now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 98. The difference between what is hard and what is easy. It turns out that the Valley of the Shadow of Death is actually a small Prussian town twice devastated by French and Russian troops during the Napoleonic Wars. Nicholas Rostov, without fear, walks right through it. He's offered this opportunity due to an armistice following the Battle of Friedland. With nothing better to do, he decides to visit the hospital where Denisov was taken after being wounded by the French. Right away, things are off. The window frames and doors of the brick hospital building are broken. The surrounding structures haven't fared much better. All is in tatters, providing a striking contrast with the idyllic pastoral summer fields filling out the background. The hospital, we're told by an attending doctor, is a pest house. It's a place where if the war wounds won't kill you, the typhus certainly will. Even the doctors succumb. Rostov is warned not to enter. He is told his friend is probably already dead. Rostov doesn't listen. He goes in anyway. Inside, the foul stench of human rot assaults Rostov's senses. He must take a moment to collect himself before he ventures further. When he does, he's presented with a scene of horrid human decay and putrefaction. Most of the patients lay unconscious upon their beds. Those unfortunate enough to remain cognizant of their predicament beg for help and for water. One of the patients requests that the dead man next to him please be removed. After all, he says, we're men, not dogs. Denisov is nowhere to be found. Tolstoy doesn't really offer us much in terms of Rostov's thoughts on what he finds in the hospital. But I like to think he compares the ease with which these bodies fall away to the difficulties he experiences negotiating his own life, his relationship with Sonia, his gambling debts with Dolokhov, his war experience, his various other social humiliations endured throughout the course of the novel due to his anger and quick temper. It must be clear to him now how easy death is and how hard life. Daily meditation. The universal nature out of the universal substance, as if it were wax, now molds a horse, and when it has broken this up, it uses the material for a tree, then for a man, then for something else. And each of these things subsists for a very short time. But it is no hardship for the vessel to be broken up, just as there was none in it being fastened together. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. All right, so that concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 98. I hope you liked it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. The links to all that are below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow we will be reading and reflecting on chapter 99. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.